2nd of January, 1811, swatting the gadfly who stung with the truth. This is part of the series Dark Matters in History, where it discusses what took place every day of the year, looking at history. It contains scary matters, and sometimes not that scary, but important dark matters that took place. Watch till the end. January 2, 1811, a date that resonates in the corridors of American political history for one particular reason. On this day, Timothy Pickering became the first U.S. Senator to be officially censored, marking a pivotal moment in the nation's early legislative landscape. Timothy Pickering was an early American pest, a persistent and self-righteous figure whose words often stung like a mosquito in the night. He was notorious for undermining the first 4 U.S. presidents and had an uncanny knack for creating discord. His disdain for George Washington led him to call the revered leader a much overrated, semi-literate mediocrity. Such comments inevitably earned him many enemies. In his tenure as Secretary of State under John Adams, Pickering's disloyalty was his downfall. Adams ultimately fired him, yet Pickering refused to resign. His obstinacy and caustic personality made him exceedingly unpopular, even among his supporters. It is said that even his biographer struggled to paint him in a positive light. The turning point in Pickering's career came on October 27, 1810, when President James Madison issued a proclamation declaring the annexation of West Florida, a territory claimed to have been part of the Louisiana Purchase. Pickering, in typical fashion, vehemently objected to this unilateral exercise of executive power. In a dramatic display, he presented a document from Charles Maurice de Talleyrand, the then French foreign minister, which stated unequivocally that West Florida was not included in the Louisiana Purchase. However, this document had yet to be declassified, a fact that Pickering conveniently overlooked. This revelation was a minor breach of protocol, but it gave his political adversaries all the ammunition they needed. Henry Clay, the aggressively expansionist senator from Kentucky, seized the opportunity to introduce a resolution of censure against Pickering. Pickering dismissed it as a put-up affair, a political maneuver driven by those who resented his truth-telling. However, his unpopularity among his peers meant that when the vote was cast, the resolution passed, leading to his official censure. On the 2nd of January, 1811, Timothy Pickering's name was etched into the Senate's records, forever marking him as a controversial figure who dared to challenge authority. His legacy serves as a reminder of the complexities of early American politics, where truth could lead to censure, and where the outspoken were often met with swift retribution. Pickering's story illustrates how the political landscape of the time was fraught with tension, ambition, and the ever-present danger of speaking out against the powerful. As we reflect on this date, we remember not just the man, but the pivotal moment in history when one voice dared to speak the truth, only to be silenced by the very system it sought to uphold. January 4, 1903, Topsy's last stand, the shocking execution of an elephant. In the early 1900s, the world stood at the dawn of technological wonders. Electricity was spreading across cities, and the very idea of power had taken on new meaning. But with this innovation came fierce competition, and even death. At the heart of this competition was none other than Thomas Edison, the so-called Wizard of Menlo Park. He was a man driven not just by the desire to invent, but by a hunger for dominance. Edison had perfected the system of direct current, or DC, to distribute electricity. But a new contender had emerged, one that threatened to eclipse his legacy: alternating current, or AC. Alternating current was backed by 2 men, Nikola Tesla, once Edison's employee, and George Westinghouse. Their system was more efficient for powering homes and businesses over long distances. But Edison saw it as a direct threat to his empire. The rivalry between these two systems would become known as the War of Currents. Edison was determined to prove that alternating current was not just inferior, but dangerous. To discredit Tesla's work, Edison staged grotesque public demonstrations. He arranged to electrocute dogs, cats, and other animals, all using alternating current. His message was clear: a C was lethal. But this was not enough for Edison. In the year 1890, he took his campaign even further. A convicted murderer named William Kemmler became the first person to be executed by electric chair. The chair, of course, used alternating current. Edison coined a new term for this kind of execution, being Westinghoused, after George Westinghouse. Yet, even after this gruesome display, the public remained divided. By the early 1900s, it seemed Edison's fight against alternating current was almost lost. Tesla and Westinghouse were winning. But Edison was not finished. He would attempt one final, shocking demonstration. On the 4th of January, 1903, in a circus ground at Coney Island, New York, the climax of Edison's bitter campaign took place. The subject of his next experiment was no ordinary test animal. It was an elephant. Her name was Topsy. Topsy had been a circus elephant for years, but she had become increasingly aggressive after years of abuse. She had killed 3 of her handlers, one after a handler tried to feed her a lit cigarette. The owners of the circus decided that Topsy was too dangerous to keep alive. Originally, they planned to hang her, a barbaric spectacle in itself, but the American Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals objected. That's when Edison stepped in with a suggestion: electrocution. Edison saw this as the perfect opportunity to demonstrate the horrors of alternating current. He arranged for Topsy to be killed using a 6,600-volt AC charge. On that cold day in January, a crowd gathered to watch. Many came out of morbid curiosity, but few knew that this would be one of the most infamous executions in history. At exactly 2:45 in the afternoon, the switch was flipped. Topsy was electrocuted in front of hundreds of onlookers. The entire event lasted only a few moments, but it was immortalized forever on film, thanks to Edison's motion picture camera. The footage would go on to become one of the earliest snuff films, a grim piece of history showing the lengths to which Edison would go to win his war. The execution of Topsy was intended to cement the dangers of alternating current in the public's mind. But instead, it became a symbol of the lengths men like Edison would go for power and control. The war of currents may have ended soon after, with alternating current becoming the standard, but Topsy's tragic end is a haunting reminder of how ruthless that war truly was. And so, on January 4, 1903, one of the darkest chapters in the history of American innovation was written. Topsy's last stand was not a fight of her choosing. It was a spectacle, a tool in a larger, more brutal conflict. A conflict that showed the world just how far human ambition could go. January 3rd, apple dumpling, a co-founder's small sliver of the pie. On January 3, 1977, Ronald Wayne found himself in an unexpected position. He wasn't celebrating a grand fortune. Rather, he felt a sense of relief. Just months earlier, Wayne had made a bold decision to extricate himself from a partnership with 2 of the most innovative minds of his time, Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak. As the co-founder of Apple Computers, Wayne was the most mature and experienced among the trio. He had been granted a 10% stake in the company, taking on the role of a parental figure tasked with keeping the two eccentric geniuses in check. Wayne later described this experience as like having a tiger by the tail. Being the only partner with tangible assets, Wayne faced a daunting risk. He realized that aligning himself with Jobs and Wozniak could lead to his financial ruin if the venture failed. So, on that fateful day in January, he felt fortunate to have signed a deal that freed him from that precarious partnership. In his exit, Wayne walked away with a check for $800, a sum that might seem trivial in hindsight, but represented a significant financial cushion at the time. This amount doubled when Apple bought out the old company to avoid legal issues. At that moment, he thought he was flush with cash. Yet, Wayne's relinquished 10% of Apple would later balloon into an unimaginable fortune, worth more than $30 billion. This staggering figure is a constant reminder of what could have been. However, Wayne always maintained that he wasn't bitter about his decision. In an interview with the UK's Daily Mail in 2013, he reflected, saying, "If I had stayed with Apple and accepted the limitations on my philosophy of life, I could have well ended up the richest man in the cemetery." Instead of dwelling on what might have been, Wayne chose to embrace a different path. He continued his life, living in a mobile home in Nevada, selling stamps and coins. He may not have been the wealthiest man in the world, but he found contentment in living life on his own terms. This story of Ronald Wayne serves as a reminder of the unpredictable nature of success and the choices we make along the way. Sometimes, stepping away from potential riches can lead to a richer, more fulfilling life in other ways. Join us as we delve deeper into the world of innovation, risk, and the people behind the tech we use every day. Ronald Wayne's story may not be as well known as that of Steve Jobs or Steve Wozniak, but it is just as significant in understanding the history of Apple and the tech industry. Stay tuned for more tales from the shadows of history that illuminate the paths of those who dared to dream.